In last 1 decade, that 1,000 has become 50,000, which means Bajaj Finance in last 10 years has given a return of about 50x. From a brand which was unknown, it has become an unforgettable company. It entered into the NBFC space, which was dominated by large banks and by the SME sector, and what they managed to achieve is nothing short of extraordinary, both in terms of creating shareholder value and also ensuring that the entire NBFC business gets a reboot. I've been told that about 80% of the mobile phones which are financed in India, they're done through Bajaj Finance. 1 out of every television set which has been sold in India, or a plasma TV which has been sold in India, has been financed by Bajaj Finance. So how have they made the impossible look easy? And today, rather than also focusing on the success story of Bajaj Finance, we'll bring out this whole concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat. If India has to grow, it needs capital. As of now, India is completely dependent on foreign capital in the financial sector. So what can be done in order to make India Atmanirbhar in the financial capital? So Mr. Bajaj, welcome to IC. Thank you for joining us. Before I get into specifics, why don't you walk us through what you think should be done in order to make India Atmanirbhar, at least in the financial sector? Because this is one sector where banks are owned by foreign investors, NBFCs are owned by foreign investors, fintechs also have global investors. How can India become Atmanirbhar in the financial sector?
So Nikunj, to this question, I would also add the role of disintermediation and fintechs, tech firms and insurtechs are playing. See, we have seen what disintermediation has done to many other sectors, from travel to ride sharing to e-commerce, retail e-commerce. Luckily, financial services being heavily regulated has not seen the disintermediation by, I call them more tech fin than fintech companies, because they're tech companies that do a little bit of fin. They don't have much of fin experience. But they've built tremendous capabilities in picking a small part of financial services and trying to really do it well from a customer point of view. You then have, so to me that's a big threat, but it's also a very big opportunity. Because keep in mind, they are nimble, they have the technology, they've got the capital from private equity. They do not have the knowledge and experience of financial services. And there is no external ERP that you can get and plug and play into India that gives you that knowledge and experience, which existing incumbents, whether large banks or NBFCs have. Also, most of the fintech startups spend most of their money on acquiring customers. Whereas for existing companies like us, not only do we acquire new customers, as Bajaj Finance, we add over 6 million customers into the formal financial services system every year. But because we sell them a financial product, we make money off the first product itself. So I believe there is a greater opportunity, smartly done, for incumbents, banks and NBFCs like us, to leapfrog the technology, I would say, advantages of some of these startups, or collaborate with them in interesting ways, and build out the next avatar of what lending, insurance, investments should be. It's equally clear that those that stay behind will then lose the game. Because eventually, with passage of time, the new companies will also gather data. They will learn from that. They know how to run their algos well. So they can get a lot more insights from data early on. It will take them some time, but I believe that's the opportunity that we have as incumbents to make sure that we up our game. I also believe that and I spoke about a little bit earlier, the public sector banks control eventually 70% of banking even now. If they don't up their game, if they don't professionalize, if they don't build the right governance models, they will continue to lose to the private sector. And lastly, we have seen for NBFCs like us that our regulations are getting closer and closer to that of banks. And I can understand the same, because in size, we are bigger than most banks in the country. But while this is resulting in many areas in a blurring of licenses between an NBFC and a bank, there are still clear areas where banks allowed to do things which NBFCs are not. And this is where I would hope that the RBI really thinks through and sees that they put NBFCs on an even keel. And I'm not just batting for NBFCs, but I believe that's the opportunity India has, and these are the kind of entities that India needs to grow.
Right. Mr. Bajaj, if one looks at the entire NBFC space, we've seen a lot of regulatory changes which have happened. Post the LNFS crisis, barring handful of NBFCs, a lot of NBFCs have actually moved into rough weather. There are some NBFCs which are even now struggling to survive. To your mind, what is the issue there? Why do you think so many NBFCs which have ballooned up, mushroomed up, at least in last decade, in the second half of the last decade, now are even struggling? Is it because of the asset liability mismatch? Is it because they were, borrowing long and lending short?
Nikunj, really, there is very little difference between a large NBFC and a bank. It's only what kind of a license you've managed to get from RBI. At least that's something that Bajaj Finance has shown over the past decade. So earlier to that, NBFCs used to be monoline. They used to be geographically limited. They were really a small set of founders, promoters that wanted to do a little bit of local lending. But that has changed, and Bajaj Finance has shown that opportunity. And I see, and a few others have done it as well, and that's why you can see that RBI has come out with some draft guidelines segregating large and other NBFCs as well and bringing them under greater scrutiny. So to me, it is less about NBFCs and banks. It is more about if we have to really take the penetration of financial services pan-India, if we have to make sure that this is available in an easy, frictionless manner to customers, it is available at very low effective cost and in a highly transparent manner, how do you go and build this? I believe the US has thousands of banks. Somebody was telling me recently, Sri Lanka has more banks than India. So forget NBFCs. Whether it's an NBFC or a bank, the whole issue is we need many more lending entities, whatever name you want to call them with. What is also important is there is a learning time and learning curve that each of these entities will have to go through. You can't just throw capital in a lending business. You will get the growth. You won't get your money back. So you have to learn how to build risk models. You have to build a risk culture in the organization. And a risk culture, again, is not about saying no. That's the easiest thing to do. Then you'll never build your business. Risk culture is about getting to know more and more about your borrower so that you're comfortable with the loan you're giving to the borrower. And that takes time. And hence, I believe that we need many more banks. We need to encourage people to start off NBFCs. Instead, I see NBFCs as a learning license to a banking license. You start off as an NBFC, you build it for a decade. If you do well on, by and large, all counts, you earned your right to get a bank license if you want that. If you don't want that, you stay on as an NBFC.
Mr. Bajaj, let's talk about the importance of data. Data, indeed, is the oil. Data is the new oil of at least this decade. Given that one side there is importance of data and how data capabilities is something which Bajaj Finance has demonstrated the advantage of it, on the other side you've got this entire privacy issue which is clearly there. Which way do you think this entire data and the data privacy issues for an NBFC would apply? Because that in a sense now is really the so-called bedrock which will enable NBFCs to grow, and they can really use their data so that they can monetize and they can really reach out to the existing customers.
Nikunj, as you know, our data rules also are currently under discussion and will get finalized soon. To me, as a basic principle, control of personal data should lie with the individual. There'll be some exceptions to this rule for national security and other things, but that control should lie. However, in a country like India, where almost half our population is illiterate and does not have access to financial services, what happens is the cost of going to them and providing them those financial services through the traditional branch route is not affordable. And that's why, even though for those that say we don't need more banks, I ask them, why are 500 million people not getting service then? The reason is that it is not a viable proposition. Technology, digitalization, and data can change that. And what would be an interesting and important thing to do is to create a base KYC data set for the low end of the pyramid for people that are by and large illiterate, which will be available only to sell a set of standard low risk financial products that the regulators approve to this population. That will make it viable. That will mean that a certain minimum amount of data the government is willing to share with everyone. But I believe that is democratic because that will lead to large scale financial inclusion. Everybody who's literate, and there are ways to define that, should have the right to decide, at least for financial products and other any kind of products, what kind of data to share. The other big discussion clearly is on data storage and security. And this needs a larger and open discussion. A country of India's size very clearly can mandate data localization. But this needs to be debated so that it is done in the correct manner. We know that with the virtualization of data, whether physical data centers are here or somewhere else, people are hacking into it all the time. So to me, it is less important where it's located. Though I must say, because of the fact that we are going to be such large consumers, we can economically set up data centers here. We can probably do it cheaper than many other countries. So I would bat for that. But the security around that is what needs a lot of thought. And that is where on cyber security, we need to build institutions, probably with industry and academia working together to help us build innovations in this area. Because all of this is still happening outside of India. We need to find our own way over here.
Mr. Bajaj, let's talk about NPAs. Governor Das yesterday referred to the fact that growth is back and a lot of NPA problems are behind us. But are they indeed behind us? Every time we feel that the NPA problem is behind us, something goes wrong here, something goes wrong there. The two classic examples is that when banks were recapitalized a couple of years ago, it appeared that we had seen back of the NPAs. But then came the IL&FS crisis. Before that was a problem in the power sector, steel sector. What to your mind is your take on the entire NPA cycle? Are we nearing the bottom of the NPA pain?
First, Nikunj, so COVID we know was an exceptional situation. But prior to COVID also, our economy has started slowing down. And a large part of that was because credit was not available to the market. And largely there were public sector banks that were bleeding high NPAs, hence they couldn't lend. So this was clearly an existing problem even pre-COVID, and with COVID it just got all the more worse. Now, what we've seen through COVID is smart private sector banks, large NBFCs went out, raised capital. People like us, we were fortunate, we went and raised capital 3 months, 4 months before we got struck by COVID, not because we knew about COVID, but we just like to plan in advance of our needs. And as a result, lending, if you see the last 5-6 months by the private sector, has started happening now, whether on the consumer side, SME side, some of the other projects. What RBI has also done is it has largely for large NBFCs and banks harmonized provisioning requirements. And this makes a lot of sense so that you control risk in the system. There are still some small benefits that banks get on provisioning that NBFCs don't fully get, but I won't get into that level of detail over here. Our problem has been with public sector banks. They, as you said, they've got some amount of capital, but that is still not enough. And that's why their ratios are still topsy-turvy. And that doesn't allow many of them, especially the mid-sized ones or the small ones, to continue to lend. And that is where, as I mentioned earlier, what we need the government to do is, and I can understand these things have to be done step by step after they've privatized a couple of them, say which are the ones that they would like to hold on to and hold on to a majority stake, but just let the rest go away. It will help build greater competition. It will help build a stronger banking system. And the last point I will say over here, even on the provisionings on COVID, is as Bajaj Finance, we have gone, because loans are multi-year loans. So wherever we saw the need for provisioning, we've taken the entire lifetime provisioning on that loan in this current year as we're taking it through, so that we clean things out once and for all and start focusing on the future. I'm not sure how many others have done this.
So just to wrap it up, Mr. Bajaj, with a specific on Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv, if one looks at the history of Indian financial sector in last 10 years, both your companies, the businesses you manage, they've managed to make a complete mark. You've reached a size and a scale at which the base effect would kick in, and AUM is impossible to grow at 40-45%, which is what you've demonstrated in Bajaj Finance. How will you ensure that in this decade, not only you become big, you also become relevant? I understand that you have a size, reach, and scale, but how will you ensure that the last decade numbers are repeated in this decade for you?
Nikunj, thanks for those kind words. Yes, this past decade has been kind to us. It's been a significant amount of work put in by our teams with the support of our investors, many of them who believed us when we were a fraction of where we were today. But it's been a lot about disruptive innovation. It's been about identifying areas where demand outstripped supply. It's been about learning to fail early. It's been about building a culture of a high degree of empowerment and flexibility when we are innovating, but with disciplined execution when we go ahead and build our businesses. And all this on a very strong foundation of manufacturing and selling financial products across lending, mainly lending and protection. We distribute a little bit on the investment side. As a result of this, across Bajaj Finance, our insurance companies, we have now over 150 million customers nationally, and we sell and service through a combination of offline channels and online channels. We enable all these partners through their own sale journeys. Now, what we are doing is looking at the next decade. We've already started the process of strengthening our capabilities in the investment space. We've applied for a mutual fund license, and we will expand our activities there in the next 3 to 5 years. But more importantly, we continue to build on a phygital business model for our customers, one that brings the best of the physical world with the digital world. And this for our customers, for our partners, and for our employees, which we hope will leverage both the worlds of today and tomorrow. It will provide customers with easier, frictionless access. It will provide them with instant service, and it will provide them with a competitive set of products and solutions for a large part of their financial needs, so that they need to just keep coming back to us rather than looking anywhere else. So that is really the desire over the next decade. And there's a lot of work going in this area. I know the competition is heating up, but we've built a very strong culture. More than that, as Bezos says, we still come to work every day believing it's day one.
Well, Mr. Bajaj, really appreciate your time. My compliments on what a formidable franchise Bajaj Finance has managed to make. And thank you for bringing out this whole entire thought of how India can become Atmanirbhar in the financial space, because that's one space where we still reliant a lot on foreign capital. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for being part of IC. With that, I'll hand it back to Padmaja and Abha.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nikunj. Thanks, Mr. Bajaj. And on that note, we break for a